Danny Kowalski was tired. It had been a long day at the garage and his back hurt. From bending over engines for 8 hours straight, he sat in his small living room in his old house in rural Ohio, watching a football game he did not really care about. The divorce had been final for 3 months now, and he was still getting used to the silence outside. The October wind pushed dead leaves across his yard. The sun had set an hour ago, and the world was dark except for the blue glow of his television. Then he heard the knock. It was soft at first. Danny thought he had imagined it, but then it came again, louder this time. 3 quick knocks. Desperate and afraid, he pushed himself up from the couch with a grunt and walked to the front door. He was not expecting anyone. His sister Marie lived 20 m away on her farm. His friends from the army had scattered across the country years ago. Nobody visited Danny Kowalski anymore. He opened the door, and his entire world changed forever. Child stood on his porch, but this was not a normal child. Her skin was pale blue like the sky just before sunrise. Her eyes were silver with no white parts at all, just solid silver that reflected the porch light like mirrors. She was small, maybe 8 or 9 years old by human standards, and she was shaking badly. She wore strange clothes that looked like they were made of liquid metal. In her small hands she clutched a device that glowed with soft purple light. Danny stared. His brain tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Costume, he thought. Some kind of Halloween prank, but Halloween was still 2 weeks away, and the nearest neighbor lived 3 miles down the road. Child looked up at him with those impossible silver eyes. Tears ran down her blue cheeks. Please, she said. Her voice was strange, like she was speaking through water. Mother said, find help. They are coming. Before Danny could say anything, the child's eyes rolled back, and she collapsed forward. He caught her without thinking, his arms wrapping around her small body. She weighed almost nothing, like holding a bundle of feathers. He carried her inside and laid her on his couch. Up close he could see faint markings beneath her skin, like circuits or veins, and they glowed with a soft golden light. Her breathing was shallow but steady. What the hell? Danny whispered to himself. The device in her hand made soft beeping sound. Danny carefully took it from her fingers and looked at it. Strange symbols moved across its surface, symbols that meant nothing to him. Then slowly the symbols changed into English words. Translation complete, the device said in a mechanical voice. Warning, pursuers detected, distance 4 miles, closing fast. Danny felt his heart begin to pound. He was a simple man. He fixed cars for a living. He had served in the army 20 years ago, but that was a different life. He was not a hero. He was not special, but he looked at the child on his couch, this impossible blue-skinned girl who had knocked on his door asking for help, and something deep inside him woke up. Something old, something that had kept him alive in places far from home, in deserts and mountains where death waited around every corner. He moved to his window and looked outside. In the distance he saw lights, not car headlights. These lights were wrong. They floated above the road, 3 of them moving fast toward his house. Danny ran to his bedroom closet and pulled out his old rifle. He had not fired it in years, but he kept it clean out of habit. He grabbed a box of ammunition and shoved it in his jacket pocket. The lights were closer now. He could see shapes beneath them, vehicles of some Kind, but they did not touch the ground. They hovered like angry wasps, silent and deadly. Danny went back to the living room. The child was still unconscious. He could not carry her and fight at the same time. He needed to move. He needed to think. His eyes went to the garage door. His truck was in there, old but reliable, and behind the house there were dirt roads that wound through the farmland for miles, roads that did not show up on any map, roads he had driven 1,000 times as a teenager, racing his friends through the cornfields. He picked up the child gently, grabbed the glowing device, and ran to the garage. The first vehicle landed in his front yard just as he pulled out the back door. In his rear-view mirror, Danny saw figures emerge from it. They were tall, taller than any human, with gray skin and black armor. Their faces were hidden behind helmets that looked like skulls. One of them pointed at his truck. A beam of red light shot past his window, so close he felt the heat of it on his face. Danny pressed the gas pedal to the floor. His old truck roared down the dirt road, bouncing over rocks and roots. The child was strapped into the passenger seat, still unconscious but breathing. Danny drove like a man possessed, taking turns he remembered from 30 years ago, cutting through fields and forests that no GPS would ever find. Behind him, the floating vehicles followed, but they were slower. Here, confused by the trees and the terrain, they had technology beyond anything Danny had ever seen, but they did not know this land. Danny did. After 20 minutes of driving, he finally lost them. He pulled his truck into an old barn that had been abandoned for years, killing the engine and sitting in the darkness. His hands were shaking. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. The child stirred beside him, her silver eyes opened slowly, and she looked at Danny with confusion and fear. "Where am I?" she asked. "Safe," Danny said. "For now." "Who are you?" Danny looked at this strange little girl from somewhere beyond the stars. He thought about his empty house, his empty life, his empty future. He thought about the soldiers outside, the ones who wanted to hurt this child for reasons he did not understand. "I'm just a guy who answered his door," he said, "but I promise you, kid, whatever is going on, whatever those things are, I'm not going to let them take you." The child stared at him for a long moment, then slowly she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cool against his rough skin. "My name is Lyria," she said. "I am the daughter of Empress Velith of the Sundari Empire, and those things that chase us are called the KF. They will not stop until I am dead." Danny squeezed her hand gently. "Then they're going to have to go through me first." Danny drove through the night with the alien child beside him. He did not know where else to go, so he went to the only person he trusted completely, his sister. Marie lived on a farm 20 m from town, alone since her husband had passed away 5 years ago. She had been an army medic before she became a farmer. If anyone could help, it was her. They arrived at the farmhouse just as the first light of dawn touched the sky. Marie was already awake, standing on her porch with a cup of coffee. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She saw Danny and LT Unk and GT Y's truck pull up. She saw the dust and the scratches on its sides, and when Danny stepped out, carrying a blue-skinned child in his arms, she did not scream or run away. She simply sat down her coffee and opened the door wider. "Bring her inside," Marie said. kitchen table now. Danny carried Lyria into the farmhouse and laid her on the big wooden table, where Marie usually prepared her meals. The child was burning with fever now, her blue skin flushed with purple. Golden markings beneath her skin flickered weakly. Marie washed her hands and began to examine the girl. She touched her forehead, checked her pulse, looked into those strange silver eyes. "She's not human," Marie said. It was not a question. "No," Danny replied. "She's not. And those scratches on your truck, those burns on your jacket, people are chasing her, not people. Thanks. They shoot light from their hands, Marie. They float above the ground." Marie was quiet for a moment, then she nodded slowly and got to work. She cleaned Lyria's wounds with water and gentle hands. She wrapped bandages around cuts that healed even as she watched. Within an hour the fever had broken. Lyria's eyes fluttered open, clearer now, more aware. "You are safe here," Marie said to the child. "Can you tell us what happened?" Lyria sat up slowly, looking around the simple farmhouse kitchen with wonder. Everything was so different from her home, so primitive, so warm. "My mother is Empress Vale," Lyria began. "She rules the Sinindari Empire. We control 47 star systems, billions of people. We have ruled for 10,000 years." She paused, her small hands gripping the edge of the table. "But there was a man, a general, named Thorax. He wanted power. He wanted to take my mother's throne. He started a rebellion, and many soldiers joined him. My mother fought back, but Thorax knew he could not win while I lived. I am the heir. If he kills me, my mother's line ends." Her supporters would lose hope. Tears formed in her silver eyes. "Mother sent me away. She gave me a ship and told me to go to a place called Earth. She said humans were warriors. She said they were the only species in the galaxy. That frightened the Cath. She said I would be safe here." Danny and Maria exchanged looks. "Why would humans frighten anyone?" Danny asked. "We can barely get along with each other." Lyria looked at him with something like respect. "You do not know your own history. 200 years ago, a KE scouting party came to your world. They captured humans to study, to experiment on. They thought you were weak because your technology was simple." She shook her head slowly. "The humans they captured fought back with their hands, with their teeth. They broke free and killed their captors. They took the Keth ship and flew it into the Keth mother ship, destroying it completely. They died doing this, but they took 10,000 K with them." Marie sat down heavily in a chair. "The galaxy remembers this," Lyria continued. "Humans are small, humans are primitive, but humans never stop fighting. They never surrender. They would rather die than submit. This terrifies species that have conquered 1,000 worlds without resistance." Danny thought about the men he had served with in the army, good men who had given everything for strangers in countries they could not find on a map. He thought about the firefighters who ran into burning buildings, the doctors who worked until they collapsed, the ordinary people who stood up against impossible odds simply because it was the right thing to do. Maybe the galaxy was on to something before anyone could speak again. Leah's device began to beep loudly. Symbols flashed across its surface. "They found us," Leah whispered. "The Cath, they are coming." Danny ran to the window. In the distance he could see the floating vehicles approaching. At least 5 of them this time. Cath had brought more soldiers. "We need to run," Lyria said, panic rising in her voice, but Danny shook his head. He was tired of running. He had been running his whole life from his failures, from his pain, from his fear. Not anymore, Marie, he said quietly. You still have Dad's guns. Marie smiled, a cold and dangerous smile that Danny had not seen since their military days. I have more than guns, little brother. She led them to a hidden room behind her bedroom closet. Inside were weapons that should not exist on a simple farm. Rifles, shotguns, cases of ammunition, and something else. Something covered by a black cloth. Marie pulled the cloth away. It was a device, sleek and silver, clearly not made by human hands. Found this in my field 6 years ago, Marie said. Been studying it ever since. I think it's some kind of shield generator. Lyria's eyes went wide. That is Sundari technology, old technology, from the first scouts we sent here centuries ago. Does it work? Danny asked. Lyria examined the device carefully, her small fingers dancing over its surface, the golden markings on her skin began to glow brighter. I can make it work, she said. Outside, the KE vehicles were landing. Danny could hear the sound of armored feet hitting the ground. He could hear voices speaking in a language that made his head hurt. He picked up his father's old rifle and walked to the front door. Whatever happens, he said to Marie and Lyria, stay behind me. Then Danny Kowalski, a simple mechanic from Ohio, opened the door and faced an army from the stars. The first Kef soldier raised its weapon. Danny raised his rifle. And for the first time in 200 years, humans and Kath went to war. The battle at the farmhouse lasted 17 minutes. Danny fired his rifle at the first Kath soldier, and the bullet tore through its helmet like paper. The creature fell, dark blood pooling beneath its body. The other Kath froze in shock. Their armor was supposed to stop any primitive weapon. It did not stop a bullet moving at 3,000 ft per second. Danny did not wait for them to recover. He fired again and again, moving between cover like the soldier he had once been. Behind him, Marie activated the Sundari shield generator. A dome of golden light surrounded the farmhouse, and when the Kath fired their energy weapons, the beams bounced away harmlessly. The Keth commander, a scarred warrior named Watch from his vehicle with growing rage. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had killed thousands of enemies, and now a single human with a primitive weapon was cutting through his soldiers like they were children. Bring the heavy weapons, Vorath commanded. Destroy the building, kill them all. 2K soldiers brought forward a massive cannon. It took both of them to carry it. The weapon hummed with deadly energy, enough power to destroy a starship. They aimed it at the farmhouse. But before they could fire, something unexpected happened. Sirens filled the air. Red and blue lights appeared on the horizon. Police cars, dozens of them, racing toward the farm. From every direction, behind them came black helicopters with no markings, and behind those came military trucks filled with soldiers. Vorath did not understand. This was supposed to be a primitive world, isolated and ignorant. How had they responded so quickly? The answer was simple. Marie had called someone before the battle started, an old friend from her army days, a woman who worked for a part of the government that did not officially exist. Helicopters landed in the fields surrounding the farm. Soldiers poured out armed with weapons that looked far more advanced than anything Danny had ever seen. They formed a perimeter around the K, trapping them between the farmhouse and certain death. A woman stepped out of the lead helicopter. She was small with black hair pulled back and a tight bun and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. Her name was Grace Leu, and she had been waiting for this day for 20 years. "Stand down," she called to the Cath through a speaker that translated her words instantly. "You are on sovereign human territory. Drop your weapons or be destroyed." Voreth laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. "You threaten us, primitive. We have conquered species 1,000 times more advanced than you." Grace smiled. "Then you don't know humans very well." She raised her hand and gave a signal. The human soldiers opened fire, but they were not using bullets. They were using weapons reverse engineered from alien technology that had crashed on Earth over the past century. Energy beams that cut through Cath armor like hot knives through butter, sonic weapons that shattered their helmets, devices that created small fields of intense gravity, crushing soldiers where they stood. KTH had not expected this. They had thought humans were alone and helpless. They had not known that Earth had been preparing for this moment for decades. Within minutes, the battle was over. Most of the Cath were dead. Law thinned. 3 of his soldiers had escaped in their vehicles, fleeing into the sky like cowards. Grace walked through the battlefield toward the farmhouse. The shield generator powered down and Danny emerged with Iria in his arms. Marie followed, still holding her rifle. "Danny Kowalski," Grace said, reading from a tablet. "Former Army sergeant. Mechanic, no living spouse. No children." She looked up at him, "and now apparently the guardian of an alien princess." "I didn't ask for this," Danny said. "Nobody ever does." Grace looked at Lyria with something like wonder. "Princess Lyria of the Sindari Empire. We've been hoping to make contact with your mother's government for a very long time." Lyria studied the woman carefully. "You know about us. We know about many things. We have been watching the skies for centuries, learning, preparing. We knew that someday someone would come. We just didn't know it would be a scared little girl knocking on a mechanic's door." Danny stepped forward, placing himself between Grace and Lyria. "I'm not handing her over to some secret government agency. I promise to protect her." Grace met his eyes without blinking. "I'm not asking you to hand her over, Mr. Kowalski. I'm asking you to help me protect her. Voreth escaped. He'll be back with more soldiers, and next time he won't underestimate us." She paused, looking at the dead Cath around them. "You killed 4 of them yourself with a hunting rifle. That's impressive. That's also exactly the kind of person I need on my team." Danny looked at Marie. His sister nodded slowly. "What do you need us to do?" Danny asked. Grace pointed at Lyria's device. "That communicator can send a message to her mother, but it's damaged and its signal isn't strong enough to reach across the galaxy. We need to boost it somehow." "How?" Grace smiled again, that dangerous smile that did not reach her eyes. "There's a crashed alien ship in Nevada. We've been studying it for 60 years. If anything can boost that signal, it's the equipment on that ship." Danny looked down at Elria. The child looked back at him with those silver eyes full of hope and fear. "Nevada it is," Danny said. And so the strangest road trip in human history began. A mechanic, a medic, a government agent, and an alien princess, driving across America to save a galaxy that did not even know it needed saving. Behind them, Vorith watched from orbit, his scarred face twisted with hatred. The humans had humiliated him. They had killed his soldiers. They had proven themselves to be exactly as dangerous as the old stories claimed. But Vorith had not survived a H-100 Red Wars by giving up. He would call for reinforcements. He would hunt the princess across this primitive world, and when he finally caught her, he would make the humans pay for every drop of Keth blood they had spilled. The war had only just begun. They drove west in a convoy of black vehicles moving through the heart of America, while the world above them burned with invisible war. Graces. People had established safe houses along the route, places where they could rest and hide from Keth sensors. Danny drove the Leap vehicle with Iria beside him. The child had grown stronger over the past 2 days, her wounds fully healed, her silver eyes bright with curiosity. She watched the human world pass by the window with endless fascination. Why do you have so many different kinds of buildings? She asked as they drove through a small town in Kansas. Danny smiled. Different people like different things. Were not all the same. In the empire, all buildings in a city look the same. It is more efficient, maybe, but we like variety. We like being different from each other. Lyria considered this for a long moment. That seems very confusing, she said finally, but also beautiful in a strange way. They stopped at a gas station to refuel. While Danny pumped gas, he noticed an old man struggling to change a flat tire on the side of the road. Without thinking, Danny walked over and helped him, spending 15 minutes in the hot sun, getting the man back on his feet. When he returned to the vehicle, Lyria was staring at him. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Do what?" "Help that man. He is a stranger." "He gave you nothing in return. There was no benefit to you." Danny shrugged. "He needed help. I could help. That's all there is to it." Lyria fell silent, her silver eyes deep in thought. Later that night, they stayed at a small motel in Colorado. Marie had gone to find food. Grace was in her room talking to her superiors through encrypted channels. Danny sat on the porch watching the stars. When Lyria came to sit beside him, "I have been watching you," she said quietly. "You and your sister and the other humans. I have been trying to understand your species, figure anything out." Lyria looked up at the sky, at the same stars her mother watched from a palace thousands of light years away. "My people are old. We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. We are wise and powerful and advanced, but we have also become cold. We do everything for a reason. We help others only when it benefits us. We have forgotten what it means to be kind simply because kindness is good." She turned to look at Danny. "But you humans are different. You fight each other constantly. You destroy your own planet with pollution and war. You are young and foolish and often cruel. And yet I saw you help that old man today. I saw your sister give food to a hungry dog at the last rest stop. I saw one of Grace's soldiers give his coat to a homeless woman in the parking lot." Her voice grew soft. "You help strangers. You protect those who cannot protect themselves. You sacrifice your own comfort for others, expecting nothing in return. This is something my people have forgotten, something we lost long ago." Danny did not know what to say. He had never thought of himself as special. He was just a man who did what Seemed right, we're not perfect, he said finally. We've done terrible things throughout history, we still do terrible things every day. Yes, Lyria agreed, but you also do wonderful things, and that is what matters. That is what makes you different from every other species in the galaxy. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars together. I hope my mother comes, Leah whispered. I hope she brings her fleet and saves us all, but even if she doesn't, even if Vor wins and I die here on this strange little world, I'm glad I met you, Danny Kowalski. I am glad I knocked on your door. Danny put his arm around her small shoulders. Your mother is coming, he said, and until she gets here, I'm not going to let anything happen to you. They reached Nevada 3 days later. The secret facility was buried deep in the desert, hidden beneath mountains of rock and sand. Grace led them through endless corridors, filled with technology that made Lyria gasp in recognition. This is Sindari, she said, touching a wall covered in golden circuits. Old Sari from before the Empire. How did you get this? It crashed here long ago, Grace explained. We've been studying it ever since. Learning, adapting. This is how we built the weapons that killed Kath at the farmhouse. They reached the central chamber where a massive machine hummed with ancient power. Lyria approached it slowly, her hands trembling. This can boost my signal, she said. This can reach my mother across the galaxy. Then do it, Danny said. Send the message. Lyria connected her device to the machine. She closed her eyes and began to speak in her native language. Words that sounded like music and mathematics combined. The machine glowed brighter, and somewhere in the depths of space, a signal began its long journey home. But they were not alone. Vath had followed them. He had brought 50 soldiers this time, and weapons powerful enough to crack the earth in half. He descended on the facility like a storm of death. The battle was brutal. Grace's soldiers fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. Marie took a wound to her shoulder, the energy beam burning through her flesh. Grace was captured, trying to protect the group of scientists, and Danny found himself alone. Standing in a corridor was nothing but a pipe wrench. Facing VTH himself, the Keth commander was massive, almost 8 ft tall, his body covered in scars from a 100 wars. He looked at Danny like a wolf looks at a rabbit. You are the one who killed my soldiers, Orth said, the primitive with the primitive weapon. Danny did not answer. He simply raised his pipe wrench and charged. The fight lasted less than a minute. Voreth was faster, stronger, and better trained. He beat Danny to the ground, broke his ribs, shattered his arm. He stood over the human's broken body with contempt. This is what happens to those who challenge the Kath, Boris said. This is what happens to those who protect our enemies. He raised his blade to finish Danny, but Danny grabbed Vorth's ankle with his one working hand. I'm not finished yet, Danny gasped through bloody teeth. Very stared at him in disbelief. The human was dying. His body was destroyed, and still he fought. Still he refused to surrender. What are you, Vor? Whispered Dot. Danny smiled, blood dripping from his lips. I'm human. We don't know how to quit. And in that moment, Lyria's message reached its destination. Across the galaxy, Empress Vale heard her daughter's voice. She heard about Earth, about the KTH, about a simple mechanic who had risked everything to protect the stranger's child, and she responded 3 days passed. Danny lay in a hospital bed deep underground, his body wrapped in bandages, his arm in a cast. Machines beeping softly around him. Marie sat beside him, her shoulder healed by Sindari medical technology that Lura had taught the doctors to use. Grace stood by the window, watching monitors that showed the sky above the desert. Vath had retreated after the battle. He had taken Grace's captured soldiers as hostages, demanding Lyria in exchange for their lives. He orbited Earth in his command ship, waiting, confident that the humans would eventually break. He was wrong. On the morning of the 4th day, the sky changed. It started with a single point of light brighter than the sun appearing in the eastern sky, then another, then hundreds, then thousands. Grace watched the monitors with wide eyes as ship after ship emerged from hyperspace. They were massive, each 1 m long, covered in golden circuits that glowed like fire. The Sinindari Imperial Fleet had arrived. 700 warships darkened the sky above Earth. Their shadows fell across continents. People around the world stopped and stared upward, seeing for the first time proof that they were not alone in the universe. Varys' command ship tried to flee. It did not get far. A single beam from the lead Sinindari vessel caught it, holding it in place like a fly in amber. In the hospital room, Danny opened his eyes. What's happening? He asked weakly. Marie took his hand and smiled. Help arrived. Within hours, Sindari shuttles landed around the world. Soldiers in golden armor secured the Keth prisoners. Medical teams spread out to help the wounded, and one shuttle, larger and more beautiful than all the others, descended directly to the Nevada facility. Empress Violet stepped out onto Earth's soil. She was tall, nearly 7 ft, with skin the same pale blue as her daughter. Her eyes were silver like Lyria's, but older, wiser, filled with the weight of 10,000 years of history. She wore robes of living light that shifted and flowed around her like water. Lyria ran to her mother and threw herself into her arms. The Empress held her daughter tight, tears streaming down her ancient face. You are safe. Velith Snorts whispered, my child, my heart, you are safe because of him. Lyria said, pointing to Danny, who was being wheeled out of the facility on a stretcher because of the human. The Empress looked at Danny Kowalski. She saw a broken man, a simple man, a man who had nothing special about him except for the most important thing of all. He had been brave, he had been kind, he had protected a stranger's child with his own body and asked for nothing in return. Vale approached the stretcher and looked down at Danny. Her presence was overwhelming, like standing next to a star. You protected my daughter, she said. You fought beings that could have killed you in an instant. You stood against an army with nothing but your will. Why? Danny met her gaze. Despite the pain, despite the fear, despite everything, he did not look away. She knocked on my door, he said simply. She was scared. She needed help. That's all I needed to know. The Empress studied him for a long moment. Around her, her advisors and generals watched in silence. No one dared to speak. Then Empress Vale, ruler of 47 star systems, commander of the greatest fleet in the known galaxy, did something that had not been done in 3,000 years. She bowed her head. The galaxy told me humans were primitive, she said, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. They told me you were violent and foolish and doomed. They failed to mention you were brave. They failed to mention you were kind. They failed to mention that you would sacrifice everything for a child you had never met simply because she needed help. She raised her head and looked at the humans gathered around her. Scientists, soldiers, doctors, ordinary people who had stopped to watch history being made. I have ruled for 1,000 years, Balith continued. I have seen species rise and fall. I have seen empires built on cruelty and greed, and I have seen those empires crumble too. Dust because they forgot what truly matters. But you humans, you have not forgotten. You still know what it means to protect the innocent. You still know what it means to stand up for those who cannot stand for themselves. She raised her hand and a beam of golden light descended from her flagship, forming words in the sky that could be seen around the entire planet. From this day forward, Vale declared, Earth is under the protection of the Sinindari Empire. Any who threaten this world will face the full might of our fleet. Any who harm these people will answer to me personally. She looked down at Danny again. And you, Danny Kowalski, you who answered your door when a frightened child knocked, you who fought an army with nothing but your courage, you will be the first human ambassador to the stars, not because you are powerful, not because you are special, not because you are special, but because you showed the galaxy what humanity truly is. Danny did not know what to say. He was just a mechanic from Ohio. He fixed cars for a living. He was nobody. But Lyria took his hand and smiled at him with those silver eyes. You are not nobody, she said, as if reading his thoughts. You are exactly who my mother said humans would be. You are a warrior, a protector, a good man. 1 year later, Danny stood on the observation deck of a Sinindari space station looking down at Earth. He was healed now, though his arm still ached sometimes. Marie worked beside him as the station's medical advisor. Grace led the first human delegation to the Galactic Council, and Lyria visited him every month, bringing news from across the Empire. The galaxy had changed. Humans had been granted a seat at the table of civilizations. They were no longer alone. They were no longer ignored. Species that had conquered 1,000 worlds now treated humans with respect and sometimes fear. Not because of technology, not because of power, but because of a simple truth that the galaxy had forgotten. When a scared child knocks on a door, a good person answers. Danny watched Earth spin slowly below him, blue and green, and full of life, full of people who fought and loved and fried and tried again, full of ordinary heroes who did extraordinary things simply because it was right. What are you thinking about? Lyria asked, standing beside him. Danny smiled. I'm thinking about how lucky I am, he said, that out of all the doors on all the worlds in all the galaxy, you knocked on mine. Lyria took his hand. It was not luck, she said. It was faith. My mother believes the universe has a plan, and the universe's plan was to show us what we had forgotten, that kindness matters, that courage matters, that one person doing the right thing can change everything. Danny squeezed her hand gently. Well, he said, I'm just glad I answered the door. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. The galaxy had finally noticed humanity, and against all odds the universe was impressed.